Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Oh, 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 oh. Sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they crucified my Lord? So, were you there? Where were you when September 11th happened? Last Friday, we all paused for a moment and remembered a terrible day. And I am certain that if you were older than 5 years, you know exactly where were you when you saw those terrible images. I'm certain you remember what were you doing, where were you when the news hit you for the first time. This was in some ways the cross of our country. This was in many ways Good Friday. I remember exactly where was I. In the library of the seminary, deep, deep underground, not because I was afraid, but because I was cataloging old manuscripts in the rare book library, secret hidden room. And I was refreshing the CNN website every few minutes, trying to find out what really is happening. Where were you when it happened? I know that we all wanted to be there for the victims, for their families. We all wanted to do something. You remember that passion we had on September 11th, the 12th, and days after? We all put our American flag stickers on the cars. And even though it was only 13 months after I came to the US, on September the 12th, I said out loud for the very first time, I feel I have become American today. Because of the power of that day, it transformed us. It made us present for each other. We all were trying to donate money. We all were trying to do whatever we could. We all wanted to be there. When Good Friday happened, at the foot of the cross, there were all 12 disciples, right? No. Just one. John, the youngest. But thank goodness all the women were there. So guys were good at talking, but when the time for trial came, they did not show up. But Mary was there, Mary Magdalene, and other women who followed Jesus. Look at the high altar behind me. What a beautiful representation of that scene. And I am certain that Peter and all others who were hiding, who did not know how to deal with their emotions of grief, betrayal, loss, they regretted their absence for the rest of their lives. I'm certain that they lived with shame for the rest of their lives for not being there. And it is difficult at times to be with people when they go through their crosses. Especially for men, because we don't know what to do with our emotions. We are not certain, should we cry? Should we say, "You'll be fine, buddy"? We don't know how to process that grief, that loss. And so many times we choose not to be there because it makes us so uncomfortable. And I remember 4 years after September 11th, Katrina happened. Another Good Friday for many people in our country. In Springfield, Missouri, where I was stationed back then, they set up one of the refugee centers for the people from Louisiana. And so they called on several of us, priests and other ministers, to go to that refugee center for 2 weeks and be there for the people who lost everything. They asked us to be chaplains for these people, to minister to them. And I was petrified of going there because I am like those guys. I don't know what to do. Do I pat them on the back and say things will be fine when we know they won't? Not anytime soon. But once I went there, thank goodness I didn't have to say almost anything. The victims and their families, they did all the talking. Sometimes I would have to babysit a child or two, but most of the times I was just there to listen, to hold a hand or two, sometimes to cry, but to be there was the most important part of my ministry. There are times when we can do nothing else but be there. When you talk to someone who's been diagnosed with cancer, with other terminal illness, when someone has been given expiration date, when you go to a hospice, when your spouse is dying, what can you do? Smile, pretend things are fine, and say, "How are you, buddy?" No point. On those Good Fridays, when people are going to their crosses, just be there. Because there is nothing you can say to make things better. But by being there, by loving that person, you make everything better. You help them know that they are not on the cross by themselves. You help them realize, you make them feel that they are not dying alone. So when you sing this hymn today, "Were You There When They Crucified My Lord," remember that your Lord is being crucified every day in your sisters, in your brothers. You don't have to say to yourself, "I wish I was alive when Jesus died. I would have been there." He is dying today. He is hanging on the cross every time injustice happens. Every time someone is persecuted, every time someone is fired from their job, every time someone is diagnosed with an illness, he is on the cross. In these sisters and brothers of yours, are you there? Will you be there? I remember when Katrina was happening, Pat Robertson, you know who I'm talking about, the preacher, said in one of his interviews that Katrina is God's punishment for all the things that have been going on in New Orleans. That God is condemning them for all the debauchery that took place there. And I thought to myself when I was reading the gospel today, has he read the Bible at least once? For God did not send his Son to condemn the world, but to save it. What's there not to get it? How more black and white could it be? God does not send Good Fridays on us to condemn us, but to save us. We have been saved by the crucifixion of Jesus. That cross gives meaning to our crosses. For when we are crucified, we know that we don't die alone, that God is dying right there with me. And that cross calls upon us to be there for others. If you went to Catholic schools or if you went to Sunday school, the priest or the nun or your Sunday school teacher should have taught you that Holy Mass is the sacrifice of the cross. You remember that? Every time you come to the Eucharist, every time you gather around this table, the crucifixion is made present to us. It's not repeated, but we are made present to the very same crucifixion of Jesus. It happens. We are witnesses of that cross. And Jesus says, just as Moses lifted up the serpent, so the Son of Man must be lifted up. And as you look at the Catholic crosses, there is the statue of Jesus on the cross. For the Son of Man must be lifted up. And as we look at it, we can be saved. The power to go through our crosses come from the cross of Jesus. When you come to Mass, you can look up at Jesus. and the grace and strength to go through your Good Fridays is given to you. During the consecration prayer, the priest lifts up, literally, lifts up the host. Look at it. Receive the power of healing. Receive the strength to be the minister of love and healing for others.